So again, we are delighted to have Terry Lacoss give us his thoughts and his ideas and his tactics and techniques on catching redfish. So on May 1st, redfish become our fish of the season for the next 2 months. So this is really timely for you to get some good information on how to catch more redfish, okay? And you know, he's among other things, I mean, I know you know that he's in our newsletter every Wednesday, but he's also in a lot of magazines. I just happened to bring my Florida Sportsman, and here's an article on Marsh Creek Reds. Okay, I save these things, all right, along with the articles out of the paper, because I like to refresh my memory on some things like that. Anyway, without any further ado, I want to introduce Terry Lacoss, and we'll talk about red fishing.
Well, I don't know if I'm quite up to par with what Mitch has built me up to, but I'll try my best. Yeah, my wife and family moved here to May Island back in 1973. Earl Titcomb was my father-in-law. Okay. Earl Titcomb was my father-in-law, and he got a job at the plantation as director of security. And I was a pretty good golfer at the time, and I got a job at the golf shop as assistant golf pro. I passed the PGA test, the playing test, and I stayed there for about 5 years. And in the meantime, I was taking the guests out fishing, mainly red fishing. And I like Walker's Creek, 16 green. There's a hole there that makes a big bend, and I would go out there at lunchtime with a golf cart and a spinning rod and catch 2 or 3 redfish and bring them back to the golf shop, and Ace would cook them for the golfers. But eventually they found out I was a better fisherman than a golfer. So they gave me a job called Director of Fishing for May Island Plantation. My wife, Mary Barr, ran our store at the Beach Club. Does anybody remember that little store? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We had that store. That was a fun store. We had it for a long time till, God, 2012, I think. And then the Omni bought it over, and they tore that whole hotel down, and they wanted us to move into the spawn shops. And I didn't think that was a very good location. So I was down doing a book signing downtown, and Don Shaw had that little store that we're in now, Twisted Kids or something. I think it was a children's shop. And I bought it. My family and I moved downtown, and that's where we've been since 2012. It's been a great move for us. And I still work as director of fishing for the Omni. I do all their charters, and I do the Ritz-Carlton charters and group charters. And my son TD and I have fished pretty much all over the Southeast, particularly in the redfish and kingfish tournaments. And that's what I'm going to do today or tonight, is try to make you a better red fisherman. Share some of my secrets, how we were successful and how we put people on redfish when we're guiding out here in the backwaters of the May Island. But I think redfish is the most popular fish besides kingfish. They might be, you know, tied first, redfish, kingfish. Everybody likes to see that kingfish take off on a speedy run or skyrocket with the bait in his mouth, chopping them all up in midair. And everybody likes to see a redfish hit a topwater plug. That's the ultimate redfish catch, is when they hit a topwater plug. But where can you fish for redfish at a May Island? Everywhere. They're everywhere. They're on the beach. They're at the jetties, at the end of the jetties. They're along the jetties. They're in the backwater. And the key is to know where to go, because we have tides. We have tides. Tides are very important, and we have moon phases. If I was to pick a day to go red fishing out of the month, I would pick it in between a new moon and a full moon. I don't particularly like a full moon because a lot of the redfish feed at night because it's light. And with a low incoming tide, with a high tide about 11 o'clock in the morning. I like an incoming tide because what happens is all the water drains out and all the bait gets out in the sloughs and in the deep water. And then when the tide comes back in, the bait fish, shrimp, crabs, and that sort of thing starts going back around the oyster bars, docks, rock jetties, and that's where you catch a redfish. But red fishing is a lot like bass fishing, and that's how I was able to catch on to it a lot. I used a lot of my lures that I used for bass fishing up in Virginia to catch redfish. My favorite lure, as the tide is coming in, I will fish a little bit away from the structure versus, fishing in close to the structure as the tide floods. And one of my favorite lures is a spinner. And y'all can come up here after I give the presentation and I can talk a little bit more about it, but I got a tangle already here. There you go. We're gonna catch a big redfish right now. But this is called the redfish magic, and my favorite. If you go red fishing without this lure, you're making a huge mistake because that little blade on there, that little Colorado blade, that gold blade, flashes and resembles a crab, I think, and the plastic tail, and that's my favorite color. Although white and chartreuse are good colors too, but you can cast this on the deep side of an oyster bar or a dock, or at a creek mouth, or anywhere where you think redfish are moving up to the structure, and just a slow retrieve, just so that blade is turning and hold the rod up to keep it just under the surface. And when they hit it, they usually got it. You don't have to wait for them to set the hook. You set the hook right away. Just drop the rod tip and set the hook.
What's it called?
Redfish Magic. Walmart, May Island Bait and Tackle, you can get them online. And I would recommend maybe one of this color, and that's like a new penny color, or white and chartreuse is a good color. My next favorite lure when the tide is coming up is a gold spoon. This gold spoon here. When you put it on a spinning rod, I usually have a spinning rod like this, about a 7 foot, with a pretty flexible tip. So why do I want a flexible tip? Well, when you cast, your back cast, it loads up your lure. It bends, much like a golf shaft does. And when you go forward with it, it lets it go a long ways. You can make a long cast with a gold spoon. And fishing is like golf a lot because you take it back, you let it load up, and then you come forward with it and let it go. And I like spinning tackle because we got windy weather around here. You don't have to deal with backlashes. And I usually put 20-pound yellow high visibility braid because it doesn't stretch. Redfish are tough fighters. When you hook them, and especially around a dock or a piling or something, they're going to take you in there and cut you off. So you need to have some tough fishing tackle. And I usually use a couple of feet of 20 to 25 pound fluorocarbon shock leader. That's like 2 to 3 feet, 2 feet, maybe. That's when I'm fishing around docks, we'll probably tie it right to the braided fishing line. But if I'm throwing a spoon, I usually put that short length of fluorocarbon shock leader in there. The other lure that I like to use for redfish when the tide is coming up and covering the oyster bars is a surface plug like the chug bug. You know, this is a great lure. A lot of fun fishing with this for redfish, especially now with the mullet are running. You know, when you see mullet out there flipping and jumping, and it's a high tide, that's what I cast out there for them, a chug bug. It's a lot of fun. And you catch better quality redfish with this lure. The bigger redfish will hit this. Any lure that's a surface lure with, this is like a devil's horse, you know, in freshwater. It's got props on the boat, on the front and the back. And it makes a lot of disturbance on the water. Much like a mullet that's injured, you know, and it's trying to get away from a hungry redfish. It's trying to eat them. I also like minnow type baits, like the Rapalas. They're really effective. I don't have one here with me, but I try to get all my lures. But a bangle lure, if you ever heard about a bangle lure, it's about a 6-inch and two sizes, 6-inch, 8-inch. It's gold. And that's a really good lure. Finally, the old standby is a jig, plastic jig. I like plastic lures when they're in the holes around a dock or an oyster bar. And again, I'm using braided fishing line with about a foot or 2 feet of 25-pound fluorocarbon. And my favorite plastic lure for redfish is a Berkeley Gulp. But there's a lot of new plastics out there that are very effective for redfish. But the new penny is a really good color. Let's see if I can get one out. Sometimes it's hard to get these out when the redfish are biting. You're just trying to get the lure, the box open or the lure open. Again, I just take this and barb it through the head and bounce it slowly around the bottom. And again, I can show you this later when you come up here.
How much
That's not
weight?
very good.
How much weight is on that?
That's a 1/4 ounce.
Is that what you recommend?
Yeah, around the docks, it actually makes it sink real slow.
Okay.
You don't want it to make a big splash and go right to the bottom. Now I'm gonna show you right here how I work a jig, so I'm gonna have to put the mic down for a second. I like an underhand cast around the dock. A lot of people do an overhand cast, but that often results in a snag around the dock. I fish a lot of docks. Probably the most popular place to fish in the Bay Island for redfish is a dock, especially if it's at a creek mouth in the bend of a river. I mean, you could sit there and catch 20 redfish in some time from that tide, especially when that tide's coming in. So I'll get about a couple feet of line out, and the drag that I set on the reel is pretty tough, because around the dock, you want to, when you set that hook, when you get a redfish to take that bait, the first thing you want to do is get him out, force him out of there. The more redfish are lost by people that have a loose drag and let that redfish get back under a dock or over an oyster bar or around a jetty. So open the bail, and I just use my finger to stop it, and just kind of underhand it under the dock, like that. And then I'll let it sink, and it's on the bottom, and it's scented. Redfish will pick up that jig without you even moving it. Just take the rod tip in this angle and just jig it right there. Let it sit there, just jig it. And when a redfish hits it, it'll be a thud. It'll be a thud. And watch your line, always watch your line. I'm always using this brightly colored braided fishing line so I can watch it. When you see that line start going to the left or the right or going to the back, you got a redfish on. So you want to get the upper hand on that redfish. When he hits that, you want to do this. just reel in the slack, feel that redfish. And here's a good point. If you have a dock piling to the left of where that redfish is going, when you set that hook, pull them this way right away. Get them away from that. Get them away from that structure right away. And once you get them hooked, this is a mistake a lot of people make. They reel down to get a better, advantage on the redfish, but you don't want to do that. You want to just reel, get him out of there. Just keep reeling, put the pressure on him. Don't drop that rod because he's going to get around that boat, that dock pile and around that oyster bar. But that's this is a deadly setup, especially if you don't have any live shrimp or bullhead minnows. Now the other thing I want to pass on to you is live shrimp on a jig head like this is that's probably the most popular way to catch redfish around here. Just hook the live shrimp through the tail. Don't hook it in the head, just hook it through the tail in the same way. Just cast it close to that oyster bar or sandbar and let it sit there and just kind of jig it. The redfish will come and pick it up in the same way it was setting the hook. Just reel down and set the hook and don't drop the rod. Keep the rod up and reel them away from the cover. And the same with the finger mullet. With a finger mullet, I normally I have some scissors on the boat and I'll cut the tail off. That gets the scent out in the water. He'll still live with his tail off. Now, that's a deadly technique for redfish. And there's a lot of mullet out there right now, a lot of finger mullet, a lot of big mullet. The other bait that's good, live bait, is a bullhead minnow.
How do you hook your mullet?
Right through the bottom lip and up through the top. Yep. A lot of people do it right through the eyes or right through the nose. But if you hook them through the lips, they'll stay alive a lot longer. And a secret I usually do is take a knife and kind of halfway scale them so it gets the scent out. And when the mullet hits the water, those scales will disperse from the mullet and get out in the water. That's a good trick. But docks, let me read it. Play this rod.
Terry,
Yes, sir.
you got your incoming tide. You got a rock jetty where you have a finger pier going out. Upstream or downstream of that rock jetty and or finger pier?
Yeah, how do you position the boat, you mean, and how do you cast?
From shore mostly.
Oh, from shore. You're fishing the jetties from shore? Oh. I don't know any oh, you're down at the south end maybe. Yeah. I've seen a lot of people fish those little rock jetties down there. Both ends are good, but the right end down there seems to be the most popular. About 6 or 8 feet away from the right side as you're looking at those little jetties. But that's another thing I was going to cover right now is I've been having really good success at the south jetties, catching redfish on that high flooding tide. I took a gentleman out there the other day with an 8-weight fly rod, and he caught about a 20-pound redfish out there with a sort of a clouser minnow in the gold. Gold is my favorite color, you know, it had gold and gold mylar in it, and I'll tell you, you catch a redfish on a fly rod, that's the ultimate, I think. But the trick we had was he had floating line, but you're using a 9-foot leader, fly line leader, and then add a little bit, you know, 8 inches, 10 inches of 25-pound fluorocarbon, and then tie the fly. And then about 2 or 3 inches from that fly, put a buckshot. Just pinch a buckshot on there so that fly gets down in those rocks. And hang on. Again, the trick, you want to get that redfish away from those rocks. So I always tell my charter guests that when he takes that fly, just pull him and just, you know, keep pulling. Don't try to get another grasp or hold on that redfish. Keep pulling them away from the rocks. But the inside of the south jetties on that last the incoming and the first of the outgoing tide is really a good spot. About, let's say 100 yards out from the end of the fishing pier, where you get those low areas in the rocks that create a little slough. I've actually got an article coming up in the Florida Sportsman, Redfish on the Rocks. Yeah, it was a fun article to do. I got so many rocks around Fernandina Beach to catch redfish. You know, one of the better places is when you go out of the yacht base in that bridge, the SR 200 bridge on the right side, that rock thing right there, that rock bulkhead, that sun heats those rocks, right? Especially this time of year when the sun is heating the rocks and the water temperature is a little chillier. There's redfish and flounder and trout around there on the incoming tide as well. The jetties, and there's all kinds of bulkheads and stuff, but that's a good spot. And you know, I keep my GPS. You know, how many people go redfishing and they can't remember where they went, where they caught. So if you have your GPS, it keeps your trails. If you save your trails, you can zoom in on it and see exactly where you were fishing. And another thing that I recommend is the tides are very important, although we've been talking about the flood tide coming in as one of the better tides in between a new moon and a full moon. And there's other times that the weather always makes an important part in your success as well. You know, if it's real windy, it's hard to catch redfish. It really is, because it stirs up all the water. And if it's raining, it gets stirred up as well. So I always look at the weather forecast. If I'm going to pick a day, I'm going to have 10 knot winds or less, and no rain, and a flood tide around 12 o'clock in the morning, and in between new moon and the full moon. The limit on redfish right now is 1 per person, 18 to 27 inches, and you have to pinch the tail. So make sure that the head is straight up on the line and you pinch the tail and it doesn't go over. The redfish are becoming very popular in tournaments. They have all kinds of live release where they have a camera on the boat and they video somebody weighing in a redfish, a power pole. I haven't fished any of those, but I see they're becoming more popular out of Jacksonville and all around the Gulf Coast. Mostly lures. At the power pole is a big sponsor of the lures, and they're trying to catch up to the Bassmaster, but I don't think they'll ever do it. And again, after I got out of the golf business, I got really into the redfish, and one of my accomplishments was writing a book. The Florida Sportsman asked me to write this book. It has a little video in it that I put together, a lot about Amelia Island, but you can't buy it anymore because they stopped publishing it because they weren't making any money. I guess the videos took over, and you can go online and see a lot of these videos now. And if you want to get into the tournaments, they have a lot out of Jacksonville. Actually, the Nassau Sport Fishing Association has a fishing rodeo where you can catch a redfish, sea trout, flounder. That's one of the fish, right, Terry?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that going to be the top prize this year, $5,000 for a redfish?
I wish we had a sponsor that would pay that.
No, that's good that the fish club does promote the backwater fishing, the sea trout, flounder,
We give
redfish.
an award for spots too. The most spots will get an award.
Oh, okay. The most spots. That's very popular. The biggest accomplishment my son and I did was we were always pretty much in the top 10 in the redfish tournaments that we fished in because we had so much experience bass fishing, and it was a lot like bass fishing. We went out with mostly casting tackle like this, spinners and top water and spoons. That's what we usually use with spinners, topwater lures, and spoons. And we cover a lot of water. We fished out of a bass boat, a Triton bass boat. We could go to different spots. During that day of fishing, we hit a lot of different water, you know, until we found that lucky little spot of water. In the redfish tournament out in Louisiana, the championship, we had located a big school of redfish in the bay and went back there with the redfish, with the ESPN cameramen on the boat, and we went back to the same spot and caught one redfish. They just shut off. And there was a creek that came into this bay, and it was high tide just coming in. And the mullet were there in the mouth of that creek. And I said, T.D., let's go over there and try it. We had about a half hour left. And we went over there, and T.D. made a cast with a zero spook, you know, the bait that goes sideways. It looks like a big mullet on the surface because there was the mullet there. We were trying to imitate the mullet. And it was walking the dog back and forth. Boom, the big 27-inch redfish hit it. And he's fighting the redfish, and I cast over here to the left, and boom, 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 another big redfish hit it. So we had two redfish on at the same time. We hadn't caught nothing all day. And so anyway, T got his in the net. We went over to mine, and in Louisiana, you got a lot of hydrilla. You know, it's almost like a bass lake. And my redfish has gotten down in the hydrilla. And T.D. took his redfish in the net and dipped it down in that weed, and we had two redfish in the net at one time, and we won the tournament. Amazingly, 5 of the top 5 boats that were in that last day, 3 of them didn't catch a redfish. They did not catch a redfish. And 2 of them, we had the only 2 fish limit, and I think another one had 1 redfish. And we were down in the Gulf fishing, and we were catching them. Roland Martin was right alongside me. I'm real close friends with Roland Martin. We've done like 9 fishing shows here. The biggest catch I've ever made on TV was Roland catching a 196-pound tarpon, and he caught his son Scott caught a 6-foot sailfish on a bass rod. I'd rigged it up with 10-pound test and a live cigar minnow. How many times are you going to go out there and catch a sailfish with a bass rod with 10-pound test? I think that guy has some kind of magical chemical in his hands. I really do. But anyway, Roland was there, and I was there with TD, and we were catching redfish all day. And that night, a storm went through, and the wind blew. Everybody went back to the same spot. Didn't catch a fish. Nobody caught any fish. But that's why you need to mark your spots on your Garmin or your Humminbird electronics. And you can see exactly when, because a lot of times you fish in a dock and you forget what piling I was fishing on. But if you zoom in on that, the fish finder, you can see exactly where you're aiming and fishing. And one of the best things that you can put on your boat is the power poles. I use those. I've never used I've got a 28-foot KMOS now, and I've never used my anchor. Either I use my electric trolling motor on the anchor mode, which is a good anchor. You can sit there if the wind blows you a little off the spot. Good advice, right? You can move it back to the spot and get your baits right in the right area. Or you can go in there and shut the motor off and let the tide take you in. Don't ever leave my motor running when I'm going to a dock or going to an oyster bar or going to our jetties. I always plan to drift about 30 or 40 feet and then put my power pole down or put the electric trolling motor in the anchor mode. So, you know, your equipment on the boat is very important too. I've got 2 live wells in case one goes bad. I've got an extra live well, and I've got big storage boxes. I've got probably 20 of these tackle boxes full of lures and power poles and electric trolling motor. That's what you need in a shallow water boat. These new bay boats are really the thing right now. The bay boats, because they can get in 18 inches. I got a 28-foot KMOS, and I can get in 18 inches of water, and really, unless you're gonna pole on a flooded flat, that's all you need around here. And you can go out to the jetties and catch redfish. And the last thing I wanna talk to you about is catching redfish on a flood tide in the fall or in the summer. You know, when you get a full moon and the tide goes back in the marsh and the redfish move up in the marsh and they'll feed on the little fiddler crabs and the crabs. You'll see the tails sticking out of the water. And you can get out of the boat, power pull it down and wade in there. And when you see a tail, you can take that Berkeley Gulp shrimp and cast it right to where that you think the head of that redfish is and let it sink down in there. And when you feel that thud, get them out. Or use a crab pattern fly, you know, with 20-pound leader. Fly fishing is very popular for redfish on a flood tide. You have about a half-hour window. So you need to get in there. When it's out of the northeast, you'll get the real high tides.
What color fly?
What's that?
What color crab fly for that? In the
I usually use just a regular brown and orange
All right.
with orange legs. Orange is a good color. Or gold, with some gold
I've
mylar.
never seen any of those.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Tan colored.
All right, I
With
got
a tan colored crab with the orange legs. That's the one you want to throw. It's a lot of fun with a fly rod. They swim around in that grass. Yes, ma'am.
You talked a lot about fishing on boats and stuff like that. For those of us who only fish on the beach, it's challenging. Where can we go along the beach on Amelia Island and target?
Catch redfish. Down at the south end is probably your best area, where the little rock jetties are.
Right, you have to drive all the way out, down and around. Is that
Yeah, you know, just fishing along the beach is kind of a hit or miss thing to catch redfish.
Okay.
It really is. You're more likely to catch whiting and pompano and bluefish and sea trout. But if I was going to catch a redfish out of the surf on the beach, I would probably go down to those little rock jetties and park your car there. If you got a four-wheel drive, you can go out there. Or on the Fort Clinch.
Where in Fort Clinch?
The jetties.
Yeah,
Where do you go?
Fort Clinch on the south jetties, on the inside of the south jetties, it's a little deeper along those rocks. Some people walk out on those rocks, but I don't recommend it because if you fall, you're going to get hurt. Yeah,
So on the riverside of you're talking about?
on the inside, yeah, would be the north side of the jetty rocks.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the incoming tide.
I'm going as good around the jetties too. But incoming, you're going to have more water there. I took my girlfriend Glenda out there one day and she caught a 50-pound redfish there. Yeah, it was the biggest redfish I've ever caught in 50 years of fishing here. Right there on the inside of those rocks on a high incoming tide. She couldn't hold it. She was like this trying to hold it. I put it in the paper. I think it's been in the Florida Sportsman. But there's a lot of redfish around those rocks. I see most people are anchor away from the rocks and they're fishing on the bottom. But if you cast lures towards the rocks and let it fall down to the deep side of the rocks, that's where you're going to catch more redfish. Because they're waiting for bait to trap up against those jetty rocks. If you're fishing away from the rocks, it's not an ambush point. Ambush point is the #1 key to your fishing success. Whether you're fishing for redfish, sailfish on a watercolor change offshore, or fishing for bass around stumps, ambush points. That's where I only fish for 15 minutes on an ambush point. A big mistake that a lot of people make, they waste too much time fishing in one area. You know, you're not going to learn anything by sitting there waiting for the fish to come to you. You need to go to the fish. That's why I have a fast 80-mile-an-hour bass boat coming. Yeah. Titty, when we fished with that 80-mile-an-hour Triton, we had an 80-mile-an-hour Triton. we'd be the first ones there. Because there were some fast boats, there's other boats that are fast, but one day we had the ESPN cameraman on the boat. That day that we won the championship, there was a bar, but it was high tide. We jumped that bar. We got full running, full speed, and we jumped right over that bar. That's the other thing, you're not fishing for redfish unless, if you never get stuck. Can't tell you how many times I've looked back there and there's big clouds of mud coming up off that Mercury motor and the boat wasn't moving. One story, I know it's about my time to quit, but one story, I had Keith Williams in the boat and there was finger mullet on this bar. And I said, Keith, when I tell you, put it in reverse. So I threw the net, filled it up with mullet, and he hit forward. We were right up on top. I swear to God, we were there for 7 hours. Yeah, because the tide was still going out. It was still going out. But anyway, I appreciate everybody coming, and I'll be up here for a while if anybody wants to come up here and ask me any questions. And good luck. Good luck. Catch the redfish.
Terry, thank you so much. That was entertaining and very informative.